confused, confusing, and misapplied, and all the other points in between. And there is still considerable discussion as to what the book really is talking about. I believe that the book really is God's instruction, guidance on selecting a mate in marriage. And that's the approach that we're going to be making on it. We'll not make the application till the end of it. I've taught this all over the country. In gospel meetings, we usually take a special night and stay for 2 hours and get it all in one lick, and that's the way I really prefer to do it. But we have to break it up on this, so you break up with me and follow as best we can. This is based on the book Song of Solomon. And that book has been interpreted a variety of ways. It has been called a parable. It has been called an allegory. The most popular view of it is that it's an anthology of love songs, just a collection of beautiful love songs. As a matter of fact, some of my dearest friends, preachers and friends that I respect, hold the view that it is a collection of love songs that Solomon has written to this girl. The fourth possibility is that it is a literal. That is, that it is a story that has an application, a point, and I believe that to be the case. I think that if you believe that it is just an anthology of love stories or of love lessons where primarily Solomon wrote it to this favored girl, if you believe that, then there are two primary characters in the book. If you believe the literal, which I do, you believe it's three. And I think there are three main characters in the book. I believe the three approach fits well to the theme of the book. I know there are problems even in the views that I hold. There will be questions, well, exactly what's talked about here, I may not be sure. But in the overall, it fits beautifully with a story. Most of your Bibles will have special spaces in the text. Many of those spaces will correlate with the points that I'm going to develop for you as the story it evolves and is developed. Secondly, it's a picture of a shepherd boy. I can't envision that Solomon was ever a shepherd boy. David, okay, but not Solomon. And this obviously has a focus on a shepherd boy. Preparation for marriage, then I don't know any other material in the Scriptures that deals with that. But no other part of the book addresses the matter of preparation for marriage. I believe this one does. Finally, if you hold the view that it's a two-part and that it's it doesn't seem reasonable to me, and that's not where you determine inspiration is what seems reasonable to me. But why would God pick out wife number 61 and have all these beautiful things unfolded to her, and then we go on and let him end up with 300 wives, 700 concubines? In the three-part, the principal characters, and I represent those characters with these little drawings that I put in the margin of my Bible. So if it's the king speaking, I represent it with the crown. If it's the shepherd girl, that's the way I draw her head. If it's the shepherd boy, that's supposed to be a shepherd's crook. Easily drawn, easy, doesn't take up much space. And then repeatedly there are a group of people known as the ladies of the court or the daughters of Jerusalem. When this group is speaking, I represent it with three stick figures. Occasionally there is a single person who speaks, unnamed, unidentified, but a spokesman. And I represent it with one stick figure. Now, the manner in which the book unfolds, I believe, is suited to a play. As a matter of fact, I'm going to describe it as though it is being done as a play, where the audience is out there, we have a stage, and these people are on the stage. And from time to time, the curtain closes. And you've got a new scene, sometimes with new characters involved in it. And I'll tell you when I think those occasions occur. Now, we're going to begin with chapter 1, verse 1. And I'm going to assign it as to who I think is speaking. You may look at it and say, what makes you think that? Well, let me tell you what makes me think that. It's what you get after the whole book. You don't get this from day one. There's nothing in the margin that says this is who's speaking. There is in my margin those things. But in the Scripture, there's nothing in the margin to say, this is who's talking. But when you get the whole story together, then you find out how these things fit together and why I will assign it that as I'm telling the story. And basically that's what it is telling the story. Matter of fact, it's late in the book that the girl says some things that tell you how she met Solomon and how she got involved with him at the very first. Now, she's already there when we start the story. But you're going to learn that later in the book. So, if you would please, hold your judgment on the interpretation of the book until we complete the whole thing. Now, with that, we're telling a story. Actually, I think it is like a play. And by the way, with the interpretation that I have placed on it, and that's not me by myself, by the way. There are a number of scholars that hold the same view that I'm talking about. Not all of them. Many of them hold a two-part, and it's just a love story anthology. Beautiful stories about love. Not to me. Numbers of writers hold the view that I hold. I got my thinking initially from Brother Haley, who got his from two little books that he found one by a fellow named Griffiths and another by a man named Reville. And those two authors both held the same view that we're talking about here. Since that time, there have been a number of writers that have said the same thing, teach the same doctrine. So I'm not the only one who believes this view. As a matter of fact, there are a number of people who hold a three-part view. With all of that, how does it open? Let me tell you a little overview. The setting for the story. It begins with Solomon's tents up in Issachar, one of the northern tribes. And the first part of the story is going to develop there in Solomon's tent. How did we get there? The girl is going to tell us later that she had been on her way, or apparently Solomon had been making a tour of the northern part of the kingdom. And on that tour, he's got a whole entourage. He's got 60 soldiers with him. He would have had all of the cooks and all of the caregivers and things like that. And then he has these ladies of the court. Remember, at this time, you had the kings, major kings in the different countries. And important people would send their daughters to the palace. And they would be like just stand-arounds at the palace. They're the ladies of the court. But they're the daughters of important people. And those important people send them to the palace with the hope that when important people visit the king, they'll see my daughter. And she'll get married to some important person. So the ladies of the court are these ladies who have been sent to with Solomon, and they travel with him. They're not married. They would love to be his wives. And they can't understand this girl having a question as to what she ought to do, because they would all jump at the case. But you've got the ladies of the court and Solomon. When the king traveled, they would set up a beautiful tent, gold and purple and all of the fineries of the tent. And this girl's going to talk about she's just a common shepherd girl from out here. And all that's going to happen. But what had happened, we're going to find it later in the book. What had happened was, she had been on her way down to check on the fruit trees to see whether they were blossoming. And suddenly, she realized that here were all of these notable people, the king's people, saw her. And she turns and starts to run away. That'll come out in the story later. She starts to run away. And when she does, they stop her. They call her, come back, come back. And she's beautiful, she's young, she's vibrant. They take her to see the king. And the king says, ooh, he's impressed with her beauty. And the king is going to make overtures to her. She's got a shepherd boyfriend. But it's the king who wants her. And the king offers so many things, but she's in love with the shepherd boy. What's she going to do? You have to stick around for the third lesson to find out on that. The story opens. These lessons are being recorded. They're online on our website. And if you get interested and want to find the end of the story, you can pick it up. I plan to speak on it next Sunday and next Wednesday night. And that will complete it. Thank you. The story opens. The girl has already been brought to see Solomon. He's already seen her. But when the curtain opens, she's here with the ladies of the court. And they're talking. King's not on the scene. And as I say, when we first start this, you may say, well, I don't know why you're saying that. Put it in the whole context before you make your decision. The story begins in verse 2, after the introduction, which is Song of Song, which is Solomon's. And the girl is saying, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth. For thy love is better than wine. Thine oils have goodly fragrance. Thy name is as oil poured forth. She's telling the ladies of the court about her shepherd boyfriend and saying, he's the guy that I'm enamored with. And the last part of verse 3, the ladies of the court say, therefore do the virgins love thee. By the way, you know what it means in the Old Testament when it talks about the virgins? It's not talking about sexual purity. I hope it includes that. But the virgins were young, eligible women, ready for marriage, but as yet unmarried. So they're the eligible young ladies, and that's what these ladies were. They were that crowd. And they look at her and they say, oh, all the young women love you. Then she says, and then they add in verse 4, draw me, and we will run after thee. We'll go with you. You're telling us about that shepherd boy. And in the middle of verse 4, the shepherd girl says, the king has brought me into his chamber. That's the way she got there. The king brought her, or the king's people brought her. And they speak up, the ladies of the court speak up and say, we will be glad and rejoice in thee. We will make mention of thy love more than of wine. Rightly do they love you. They're saying, I can understand why Solomon's in love with you. I can understand why the shepherd boy like you. You're a winner. And we can understand why everybody thinks you're just great. It continues. And the girl is going to make a defense of herself. She's going to talk about herself and say, I don't belong here. This is not my kind of place. Verse 5, she says, I am black. Now, a lot of people have picked this up and have thought that it meant she's Negro black. No. It's going to explain later that she is swarthy. The sun has scorched her. She's dark. What do you think the ladies of the court would look like? They've been protected. They've been under the shade all the time. Their skin is real. What does this girl look like? She's a working girl. She's been out in the field. Well, read on. I am black. And the ladies of the court say, but comely, you're beautiful. She says, I am black, O ye daughters of Jerusalem, as the tents of Kedar, as the curtains of Solomon. The curtains of Solomon would probably have been a dark purple. Look not upon me, because I am swarthy, because the sun has scorched me. My mother's sons were incensed against me. They made me keepers of the vineyard, but my own vineyard I have not kept. She says, I'm dark. I'm cooked by the sun. My mother's sons, I like that. She doesn't say my brothers. You can almost see her with that. My mother's sons made me keep the vineyards. And my own vineyard I have not kept. I haven't taken care of myself. I haven't stayed in out of the sun and been primping and all of that like the ladies of the court would have. She said, I've been out in the field all the time, and I'm dark from the sun. The sun has scorched me. She's tanned. So then she turns aside in verse 7 and says, tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest thy flock, where thou makest it to rest at noon. For why should I be as one that is veiled, like the ladies of the court, beside the flocks of thy companions? I don't belong in this. I'm a shepherd girl. I'm a poor girl. I'm used to the everyday life. I have worked. These ladies are the ones who have been veiled. They have been protected from the sun. And I've been out in the sun. And the ladies of the court maybe are getting a little piqued at her. And they say in verse 8, if thou know not, O thou fairest among women, there may be a little cynical touch there. Go thy way forth among the footsteps of thy flock, and feed thy kids beside the shepherd's tent. Can't you hear them saying, girl, you're crazy. The king is interested in you. And you're talking about some shepherd boy? You could be married to the king. And you're talking about spending your life in a shepherd's tent? Come on. And with that, the curtain closes. When the curtain opens, the same group are there, the girl and the ladies of the court, but the king has come in. And we could have gotten him in without closing the curtain on this occasion. We could have had him just walk on stage. But the king comes in. And in verse 12, in verse 9, we hear the king for the first time. The king says, I have compared thee, O my love, to a steed in Pharaoh's chariots. Thy cheeks are comely with plaits of hair, thy neck with strings of jewels. We will make thee plaits of gold with studs of silver. Listen to the king's love appeal to this girl. I've compared you to a steed in Pharaoh's chariots. How many of you girls would be thrilled if your boyfriend on some beautiful moonlit night, sitting beside, if your boyfriend looked at you and said, honey, you look like a horse? Well, stop a minute. That time. What kind of animals do you think Pharaoh would have pulling his chariot? He would have had the most beautiful steeds of all. They would have been vibrant, full of energy, beautiful, sleek, and all of that. And so what the king says to her is really a compliment. Doesn't sound like it maybe to us, but it's really a compliment. You're like one of those beautiful horses that pull the king himself, pull the Pharaoh himself. Read on. Thy cheeks are comely with plaits of hair, thy neck with strings of jewels. But what am I going to do for you? We will make thee plaits of gold with studs of silver. What does the king start with? honey, I'm going to give you riches. I'm going to give you all these things that shepherd boys don't have. I'm going to give you wealth. You're going to be very important. The girl answers back, while the king sat at his table, my spikenard, and she makes many references to things of nature, the flowers of the field, the birds, the trees. All of her illustrations are from nature itself. While the king sat at his table, my spikenard sent forth its fragrance. My beloved is unto me as a bundle of myrrh that lieth betwixt my breast. My beloved is unto me as a cluster of henna flowers in the vineyards of En-gedi. She's thinking about her boyfriend. And she said, he's special to me. And he's like these beautiful things of nature. Solomon picks it up again. Behold, thou art fair, my love. Behold, thou art fair. Thine eyes are as doves. Behold, thou art fair, my beloved, yea, pleasant. He doesn't have a very good line, to tell you the truth. And he's going to keep offering the goodies that he could afford to her. She answers and says at the end of verse 16, our couch is green. The beams of our house are cedars. Our rafters are firs. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. Solomon's talking about how beautiful she is and what she could have and all of that. And she said, I'm a plain girl. Our couch is green. Probably an allusion to taking the boughs of a tree and laying it down and throwing a cover over it, and that's your bed. Very natural. Very plain. She said, that's all we have. Our house is made out of cedars and firs. Those were the common woods. They may be expensive down at Home Depot now, but they were very common woods in that area. Our house is made out of the common things that are grown here. And in chapter 2, verse 1, it continues that same thought. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valley. Now, the people who believe that this is a beautiful anthology of love stories, the Jewish people used to say that it was a picture of God's love for Israel. Catholic Church people have commonly held that it's a picture of God's love for the church. And we've got a couple of songs in our songbook based on this verse. Jesus, Rose of Sharon, and Lily of the Valley, both of which the authors of those songs thought this was talking about Jesus. It's not. The girl is saying, I'm like a lily of the valley. I'm like a rose of Sharon. Those were common wildflowers. Sharon is a plain alongside the Mediterranean Sea down by Mount Carmel. And the Sharon plain abounded in wildflowers. And she says, that's what I am. I'm just a plain girl. I'm just a rose of Sharon, lily of the valley. I'm just like the wildflowers. I'm just plain. I'm just one of them. He says, verse 2, chapter 2. You're a lily, all right, he says. As a lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. Solomon still is holding on. And with that, the curtain probably closes. Solomon is gone now. When the curtain opens again, we've got the shepherd girl and the ladies of the court. And maybe the ladies of the court have asked her about her shepherd boyfriend. And she starts talking about him. Chapter 2, verse 3. Here's her description, or one of the descriptions. She's going to make 2 or 3. Here's her description of her shepherd boyfriend. As the apple tree among the trees of the wood, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down under his shadow with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Stay ye me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am sick from love. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. Let me make an observation first. She's pure. There are going to be about 3 different references to her purity, from her, from the shepherd boy, and from the king. But she's in love. They've embraced, he's hugged her, she knows that she is infatuated with him. But purity is here, and it'll come out several times during the book. But she's describing her boyfriend. He's like the apple tree among the trees of the wood. I haven't grown up where apple trees are. But I'm told that apple trees are like some of the trees that we have here in the South, where they blossom before the other trees really put out their colors. Imagine that a woods that has lost its leaves during the wintertime. It's all just looked like this dead wood. And then here's an apple tree that has got its blossoms out. And so against the backdrop of everything else kind of brown and dead looking, here's this beautiful tree. This girl says, that's the way my boyfriend is. To me, he is like the apple tree blossoming. And I am sick from love for him. And I have been with him, his banqueting house. His banner over me was love. She's in the tent of Solomon with its gold and finery and all of that. And she says, my boyfriend and I are out. The banner he has over me is his love. Stay ye me with raisins. Refresh me with apples. Those were the common things that they could have, that grew at home, that they could have. And she said, when I'm out with my shepherd boyfriend and his arm is around me and we're eating a McDonald's sandwich, she said, it's like my banquet. The banquet house is covered in love, as opposed to the finery of Solomon. Then she turns and speaks to the ladies of the court. And here's where we're going to stop today. She turns and speaks to the ladies of the court and says, I adjure you, I plead with you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the roes or by the hinds of the field, again, the animals of the field, that you stir not up nor awake love until it please. Most of the translations will say, don't awake my love until he please. The word my is by interpolation. And the word he is a pronoun that can be he or it. I really believe what it's saying is, don't stir up, don't try to push me to fall in love with Solomon. Don't press love until it pleases. If I'm going to fall in love with Solomon, let it be by the natural process and not because you've said, hey, you ought to go do that. Leave me be. So where are we? We're in Solomon's tent. The girl's talking. Solomon has made his first appeal to her. There will be more. She's reminiscing about her shepherd boyfriend. She'll do that more. And she's telling the ladies of the court, don't pressure me to fall in love before it's a natural process. Curtain closes. The curtain will open again next Sunday morning with verse 6. Do yourself a favor. Read on through and see if you can pick up the story. Thank you for listening so kindly.